Peacemaker, Season 2, Episode 6. This is going to be a full breakdown and review of the latest episode, and boy oh boy did we have some big reveals, finally. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, hit that noti bell. Alright, Peacemaker, Season 2, Episode 6. Like I said, there were a lot of revelations and reveals in this episode, and a lot of them were very, very predictable. And obviously the biggest one we are going to get into at the end. But to start off, we have the 11th Street Kids going to the other universe to find Peacemaker. So it starts off with them all going to Adrian's house, and you get that funny moment between him and his mom. His mom just seems like a really sweet lady, and yet he just thinks she's nothing but a pester. And then you get that really funny interaction about how his mom thought he and Harcourt were dating. And then you do also get that little funny interaction about just how to pronounce her name, which again, that's a very real world thing, because I know even myself, I thought for a while her name was Harcourt versus Harcourt. So just again, the self-awareness that the show does display is really, really enjoyable, and I think it's really cool. That being said, it then continues with them going to Adrian's secret room, and that's when we have that reveal of he literally has and stores every illegal item that he's ever confiscated. And then they all ask him, well, why don't you do anything with this? And he's like, well, no, that's blood money. So he just has stacks of millions and millions of dollars plus millions of dollars worth of paraphernalia. And then you get that funny moment where Economos, Adebayo, and Harcourt, while Adrian is changing, just decide to steal as much money as they can. Because again, they're real people, and being around that much money, it would be hard not to take at least a little bit. But again, for Adrian, he would never do that because that's, in his words, blood money. That being said, that's when we do go over to the other universe. We see Keith, John Cena's Peacemaker, and their dad all out at dinner, and they take that family photo. And again, we still are not seeing anyone of color. And again, with the reveal at the end of the episode, this all makes sense, and that's how James Gunn did really give us Easter eggs for this reveal all the way back in the beginning of this season, because he definitely does usually cast, or almost always cast, a very diverse group of people, even if it is just background characters. So there had to be a reason why he was doing this, and now again, it does make way, way more sense with the reveal at the end. That being said, it does have them going over to the other universe. They make that transition. They end up in the other Peacemaker's room. And that's when you have Harcourt and Keith have that interaction, and the other three are just kind of hiding there. And then Harcourt goes off with Keith. They end up going to Argus, and while that's going on, Vigilante is adamant about meeting his otherworldly self, and any type of explanation the others give him as to how that doesn't really make sense, he just brings it full circle and is very set on meeting himself. And another thing I really enjoyed about this episode was how much Adrian Chase was in this episode. In my opinion, that was the biggest negative, or one of the biggest negatives about season 2 so far, was the lack of Vigilante and the lack of his presence, even if it's him out of costume, because he's my favorite character in the whole show, and I think a lot of people really, really enjoy his character. So the fact that we got a lot more about him in this episode, and even that funny moment where now instead of spiders or owls, it's now alligators, and he's just expert on alligators, I guess, and then he brings up manta rays. So again, it's just that really good comedic banter that he manages to have with every single character. And I think that was really missing from a large majority of this season. So I'm really happy that episode 6 included that, but not only that, they really doubled down, because then we get Vigilante going to his otherworldly house, and you just see as he's walking up, he's pointing out the things that are different. He sees the box of Cheerios, or I forget what exactly it says on there, but it's different than Cheerios, and he grabs them and says, oh, I'm taking these. And again, that's just so Adrian Chase, just so funny. And he walks past his parents, and he's like, oh, in this universe, I guess my dad's not gay. And again, just his comedic timing, and he really does remind me in a lot of ways of Deadpool, but also different in a lot of ways too. But as far as from a comedic standpoint, he really is similar to Deadpool. And I really, really love Freddie Stroma's portrayal of this character, and I think a lot of people do. That's when we end up going downstairs with Adrian. He finds out that his keys do indeed work, so he opens the door to find Vigilante. And at the beginning, the other vigilante is kind of like, who are you? What's going on? And I really love that moment where he kind of says, oh no, dude, don't worry. He takes off his mask. And instead of having like a little bit of a fight or anything, the other Adrian almost immediately believes him. And then they have that amazing cool moment where they do the Spider-Man meme over and over again. And again, that's just more about Peacemaker's ability to be self-aware and to also tie in things from the real world. And doing that again with the Spider-Man meme over and over was just absolutely hilarious. And I know that's one thing that, like, Spider-Man No Way Home did something similar to that, but they didn't directly say, hey, let's do the Spider-Man meme. Whereas this show is going to do that because it's just very, very self-aware. And it gets very close to a type of fourth wall break in some ways. Now, obviously, they don't do that, especially not like how Deadpool does. But again, it's very similar in some ways, and I really enjoy that aspect. And then as the episode progresses, we have Harcourt going into Argus. She does get stopped because she has paraphernalia all over her, thanks to Adrian's warehouse. So she gets put into a room. That's when she meets Peacemaker. They have that talk about him still wanting to bring up the boat and her not wanting to talk about it at all. They do have this little bit of a heart-to-heart about Rick Flag, and she mentions that's how she was when they first met, but then he did change her mind. But she's still not admitting her feelings, and in this moment, I can't really blame her, because even though he didn't directly say it, it is kind of implied that, hey, if she says, oh yeah, I love you, he's gonna go back. But if she says no, he's just going to stay there. So she is in almost a lose-lose, because even if she does have feelings for him, she doesn't want to reveal it right then and there, especially not under those circumstances. She would want it to be in a different situation, in a different surroundings, and obviously in their own universe. But they do end up giving her a drug test. She gets cleared, so she is free to go. That's when we notice she is on her way out, and while this is going on, we have Adebayo and John Economos still back at the other house. Adebayo decides to take that walk outside, and everyone starts freaking out. Again, a bunch of white people start freaking out and even start chasing her. And this is where it is very much so relevant that this is Earth X, or at least some version of Earth X, where the Axis powers did win World War II. And this is something that I've been saying for a while, and pretty much every single content creator and everyone online that I've seen has also been saying this, because they have made it fairly obvious, or at least obvious if you pay attention to the little Easter eggs and hints at all. Then we do get John Economos having that confrontation with Peacemaker's dad. He stabs him in the hand, and then he just decides to spill the beans and mention how Peacemaker killed his actual son, Peacemaker. And then he even says, oh no, I don't know why I told you that. And then Peacemaker's dad has a little bit of a pause moment there, revelation, because now he's having to come to grips with the fact that his son is gone, and the person who actually killed his son has been just cohabitating with them for the past few weeks, maybe even a couple of months. So that's definitely something that he's going to have to deal with, especially in the next episode, as we saw in the previews. And then while all this is going on, Vigilante and Vigilante are having their banter about different things they like, different things they dislike. They hate skin-to-skin contact. Just really funny moments, but as all that's going on, you have Adebayo being chased, and then you get the big reveal about, hey, who's your best friend? Peacemaker? And the other vigilante freaks out about it and says, no, I hate Peacemaker. He's my arch enemy. He's actually one of the biggest reasons why I joined the Sons of Liberty. And that is when it does get revealed that this is officially Earth X. You see the American flag that is an Argus that they deliberately were not showing the whole thing of, and that's because it does have the Axis powers, one of their symbols on there. Again, I'm not even going to say it, I'm definitely not going to show it, because I don't want this video to get taken down, but all of you, again, if you know World War II, the Axis powers, you know who I'm talking about. That is who won World War II in this universe, and that's why the world is the way it is in this universe. Now, that being said, it sets up a lot because then we get Harcourt at the end confronting the other Harcourt and saying to arrest her. Then it ends, and next week we are going to see Peacemaker's brother Keith and his father chasing after them. There is going to be a confrontation. We saw a judo master, and it is all going to culminate, and it really makes sense as to why James Gunn really did say episodes 6, 7, 8 are really going to heat up. And then that's not even one of the biggest reveals because that was really hinted at. But another thing that was revealed, a character appeared in this episode, actually a little bit early on, and that's when Rick Flag decided, hey, contact Belle Reve, I need to see a prisoner. I think everyone knew at this moment it was going to be Lex Luthor, and lo and behold, there was Nicholas Hoult, and he obviously knows Rick Flag needs something from him, and he does just still, even behind bars, have this imposing presence because he says to him, hey, that's a great offer. Actually, it's really not. It kind of sucks. Let me know what your final offer is because I know you really do need something from me. So in order for me to give you any type of consideration to even do that, I'm going to need to know, what are you prepared to do for me? And then we do find out Rick Flag Sr. is going to move him to a different facility away from metahumans. In my opinion, I think it'll go even deeper than that because Rick Flag Sr.'s face when he was telling the Argus agents about that did not seem as though that's all that was in the bargain. I think it goes way deeper than that, and that's why in the next 2 episodes I really do think it's going to all culminate with Lex Luthor helping Argus out to get into that other dimensional rift space. And obviously when they deal with the events from the other Earth, I think it's not necessarily going to end there. And we know that because James Gunn said Peacemaker Season 2 has a direct tie-in to Man of Tomorrow. And I think realistically, there are 3 ways in which that can happen. First and foremost, I think, as I covered in my Man of Tomorrow video, that Brainiac could be responsible for the Axis powers winning. He could have come here earlier and just saw to it that he wanted that power to win the war because then he could have more control. He could get easier access to the world's information. Now, unfortunately, I do think this is probably the least likely option. The next option is something they did in the Justice League animated series, and that's Vandal Savage. He actually, in that time period, went back in time, but in this, it could have had it to where he was on the Axis powers side in World War II, and he was the reason they won. He could be revealed to be the big bad of Peacemaker Season 2, and then he could even bring about something that causes events to kind of roll over to Man of Tomorrow. And that could be a really interesting dynamic because it could explain why you need Lex Luthor and Superman to team up. But realistically, in my opinion, the most likely thing that I think is going to happen is the Crime Syndicate is going to be revealed, or at least some version of the Crime Syndicate where it's an evil version of the Justice League. And that's going to culminate in obviously not getting solved in this season, but it is going to result in the Crime Syndicate being in our universe, being in the Superman universe, as we'll call it, and that is going to have David Cornsweet and Lex Luthor have to team up. Superman and Lex Luthor teaming up to stop this insane threat. And that would really make sense. Again, I think all of those 3 options are very reasonable, but I think that's probably the most likely one and the one that would make most sense. But let me know what all of you think. What'd you think of the episode? How do you think this season is going to end and also set up Man of Tomorrow? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you guys are down there, like this video, subscribe to the page, hit that noti bell, and I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.